Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Oh, this is so fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been so great. I just got a photo from Carmel from Claire's home, and I think she might have won the snow competition. It's like over her head. There's been a lot of snow in Alberta this week. So I hope our friends in Toronto that are joining us thoroughly enjoy the heat wave that you're experiencing, as well as our friends in Montreal. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining today. This is really wonderful. So I'm going to try, there we go. Okay, perfect. I'm trying a new format here, so thank you for learning with me. So the webinar today is on tools and templates. I'm Allison Moore, if we haven't met yet. I'm the artsvest program manager for Alberta, and welcome and thank you so much for coming today. So this webinar should be under an hour. I was just watching the one from our colleague from BC who did one last night, and so I'm going to guess that I'll probably go for about 40 minutes and then do questions. So if you can save your questions for after the webinar, that would be super helpful. If there's anything directly related to the content, please do pop me a note, but I will try to go through the questions afterwards just for everybody. We're going to be going through a little bit about Mentor City today, as well as a whole bunch of different tools and templates. So first, to start off, I want to acknowledge that where I'm hosting the webinar, I'm based in Calgary, so on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina and Nakota Nations, as well as the Métis Nation Region 3, and all of the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. So, okay, I'm going to start off here with the webinar. So if you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A and not in the chat window. I think what we learned from last time is I can only see the last 5 things in the chat window, so it flares up too quickly for me to be able to follow along. So thank you so much. I've also got my colleague Monica in Toronto on the webinar, so she's going to be helping out if there's any technical issues. If you need to reach her, her phone number and her email is in my out of office right now, so if you're having any issues, we had a couple people who got weird Zoom error messages last time, so I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time. Yeah, okay, so and let me see. Oh yeah, and this is just a heads up for people that are new. This is going to be I think I've got one more webinar at the end, which is our sponsorship report that I host on my own, but otherwise, starting next week, on next Wednesday, webinars will be primarily, I'll be kind of coordinating the webinar, but it'll be really hosted by our mentors. So that's really exciting. So yeah. Oh, fantastic. Oh, great. There's some help on some audio issues. Yes, we have realized that Google Chrome is the way to go for Zoom. So if you are having any issues, that's the best way to do it. I do want to also mention, we have a couple people that have been calling in for the webinars and for attendance. If you call in, if you can email me who you are and that you called in for attendance, that's super helpful, because otherwise I have to go through all of our data to try to find your phone number to track who you are, which is kind of crazy. So lots of fun things that we're learning as we start with Zoom. So thank you so much, everybody. Okay, so double screen. Okay, great. So today we're going to be going through our resources in Mentor City. I just want to say, starting off at the top, if you were with ArtsVest last round, there are some additional new resources that are in there, not necessarily from the tools and templates place. We have updated a bunch of them, so just to give you kind of a off the top heads up in case you're familiar with this webinar before. So there are some additional pieces of research and some community resources and some archival material that we didn't have accessible before. So I'm going to go through those, and then a refresher for all the different resources that are available on it. It's kind of intense when you log into a website and you see like over 16 different tools that can help you. So it's what I find is it's really nice to listen to this webinar to go through and actually understand, like, oh, well, that might be helpful for our board, or maybe we can do that. I think it's also really important to think about how these are templates, and so use them, take whatever works for you, and go off and use that. This isn't the be all end all. These are just kind of examples that we found as best practices from different organizations that we've worked with. So take all your favorite parts from all of them and then customize them to what really works for you. And then afterwards we'll do a Q&A. And then we've figured out how to do a poll question through Zoom. So I will then ask you to complete a poll question about whether or not this was helpful or not. So that will be happening at the end. All right, so yes, okay, great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm now going to switch over to Mentor City and walk through some of the Mentor City pieces for you. It's working, fantastic. Okay, so one of the important things with Mentor City is to realize like you get one account for your organization. So the account login is set up with the email address of the person who was the primary contact on your application. Up to 5 people can have their emails in the account, but really that person is just kind of the gatekeeper for the account, but other people can log in. So as long as they have your login and your password from your organization, they can log in and they can download the resources, and they can you can send a login to your board so that they can watch the different webinars and pieces. So that's just kind of how it works. So it's not multiple accounts for each organization. It's just one account for your organization. So when you go into Mentor City, you'll see your account here. And then if you go over to the top, there's a section called resources. So this is where a lot of the stuff we're gonna go through today. So I just wanna kind of walk you guys through them. It's sometimes easier to see it from kind of this angle. So yeah, so starting off, what we're gonna do this round is when mentors give different materials or documents or their slides from presentations from the webinars, we're gonna store them all up here. And then right here is our sponsorship confirmation agreement. So what I wanted to click on to show you guys today, which I'm very excited about, is that we have 4 different kinds of agreements this year. It's all the same agreement, but it's in different formats. So if you really like to work with PDF and you want to open up it in Adobe, don't open up the PDF in Google, it'll be a mess. But if you download Adobe PDF for you or not Adobe Connect, and then you open the form from there. We've tried to make the form as easy as possible for yourself and your sponsors with kind of pre-calculated information in it and drop-down menus just to make the form as easy as possible. So we also have a fillable form in Microsoft Word and an open document in Microsoft Word. So kind of click through those, see which one's best for you. We just really, our amazing program manager, Kenji in BC, he's technically savvy more than the rest of us, and he was able to create these so that we were able to have more options for when you are filling out this confirmation, the sponsorship confirmation agreement. So one of the things I did want to mention about the agreement, I'm not sure if I have Adobe. Oh, I do on this computer. Okay, great. So the important part that I always try to tell everybody is the most important part is the last page, because the last page actually, like if I was you, I would just print off the last page and keep it on my desk, because it's a constant reminder of exactly what proof you need to submit. So it goes through the checklist of what you need, if you're getting a cash sponsorship, what you need, if you're getting an in-kind sponsorship, what you need, and then public acknowledgement with your sponsor logos. So I find this is really print off the form so you know what you have to work on with your sponsor, but this is a really great reference point for the program, just to be able to understand like, oh, okay, well, when we get to the end of that process, this is what I need from them. So going back into Mentor City. So that's the sponsorship confirmation agreement. And then we have a lot of, everything's in French now as well. So if you're interested in our French resources, they're available. And they're all available here. We also have our eligibility guidelines. So those are on our website, but this is also, and it's a handout I gave out at the launch, but a great reference for you guys in case, I can just, let's see, that actually goes to the website. So that would then go to, so I guess they're listed on the website, and under Artsvest Alberta, it'll list different eligibility guidelines. So that's there. The other piece, which we've looked through, is the matching percentages by category. So that's if it's a new sponsor, a multi-year sponsor, an increasing sponsor. If you're like, oh, what are the matching rules? I forget what they are. They're all available here in Mentor City. And then we also have our funder logos. So big update for Alberta. This year, you only need to recognize business in the arts and Canadian heritage. So you're welcome. I was going to say you're welcome to add the additional logos, but we've made it, there's just been so many different funders provincially for our program that we wanted to make it easier for arts organizations for recognition. So if you do have the ability to recognize business in the arts and Canadian heritage, the logos that you can use are all available right here. So don't worry about Calgary Arts Development and the Edmonton Arts Council for your artsvest specific funding. Okay, and then the sponsorship one-on-one slide. So that's the presentation that I gave at the launch, which is kind of the introduction to sponsorship. So if you've got board members or staff members that are like, what is sponsorship? It's my first time. This is a really great presentation. Though I have to admit, a lot of people that were advanced in sponsorship that attended the workshop really appreciated those resources as well. So those are available. And then these pieces are this is what this presentation is about. So I'm going to go through the presentation, but this is where they are. So they're separated by the different sponsorship cycles. So planning and prospecting, cultivating and making an approach, activation and valuation, stewardship, and then we've got our marketing tutorials. So this is really great resources we didn't have before, which are different marketing tutorials. So those are available there. The Art of Sponsorship, which is a six module course that Business in the Arts has recorded. That's available there as well. And then the ever elusive webinar recordings. So I'll go through this later, but these are previous webinar recordings that we have posted so that you can watch previous webinars if you're interested. And then we have some additional community resources. So they're resources from Mass Culture. There's resources from the Cultural Human Resources Council, Onboard Canada, BoardLink, Culture Track, different resources from Business in the Arts, as well as our Culture Track Canada study. So there's a whole bunch of different kind of pieces there. And now back to the presentation. Look at that. Okay, great. Fantastic. No questions so far, guys. This is fantastic. Okay, great. So what we just walked through was the sponsorship agreement, the French language resources, the matching fund table, eligibility guidelines, funder logos, and the sponsorship workshop. So those are all available. So now going actually into the documents. So we've organized the documents based on where you're at in a sponsorship cycle. So in the first ones that we're going to review are from the planning stage. So planning can be defined as the stage of sponsorship where your organization is focused on the design of an organized and efficient framework for the steps required to successfully partner with a sponsor. So this is the stage where your organization is trying to figure out how a sponsorship fits into the business plan, the marketing plan, the strategic plan, and also the stage where you figure out your actual sponsorship plan. So identifying how much you need to sell, what do you need to sell, and what you're trying to sell. So next, we're also, so this is the planning and prospecting stage. So this is just a definition of prospecting. So prospecting is the stage in the sponsorship cycle that can be defined by how we understand and use information gathered in the planning stage to ask relevant questions and make strategic decisions about who to approach and when. So this is the stage when your organization is going to identify potential sponsors through a variety of different means, such as approaching board members or warm contacts, researching businesses in your community, or approaching your Chamber of Commerce. So the first sample document that we have in Mentor City is a sample sponsorship plan. So this is specifically a document which is designed to capture your goals, your objectives, action items, target revenues, and potential prospects. And so here is an example of the sponsorship plan that's available. So this sponsorship plan is for the Muddy York Theatre, and it's their sponsorship plan for 2015, so you can tell how old this reference is. Anyways, but so it's essentially an Excel sheet, and what they do is they identify in one column what their goal is. So their goal is to implement a combined strategy of retaining and acquiring sponsors to meet, and if possible, exceed their annual target of $200,000, which is a ton. So their objectives, so then they're identifying what's their actual objective. They want to renew York Bank as their presenting sponsor for 3 years and increase the sponsorship investment by 0.2%. The action is that they're going to discuss at their board meeting in March, and they're specifically going to contact their personal contact named Reggie. And so then they've outlined a deadline to reach out, the current amount of money that the sponsor is giving, the target revenue, an estimate, and then new prospects as well. So this is just kind of an example of a sponsorship plan. And again, I think it's just really important to realize, pull out what works for you guys, and hopefully that'll help. I think the shortage of time and resources is prevalent in all organizations. So we just hope that these will kind of make your processes more efficient and might help you out with what you're already doing. Okay. Perfect. So the next one is a sample list of benefits. So this is a spreadsheet to help identify what sponsorable properties or assets your organization has to offer. It's really a place to build from. It's kind of about starting the conversation. It's easier to consider who might be a potential sponsor if you know first what you have to offer. So looking at that, here's an example of a sample benefits list. So you're looking at the sponsor connection to the target market. So this could be print material, signage, online, activating in your lobby, sampling in your lobby, hosting events in your lobby, all sorts of different options. And then the benefit that the different benefits they could receive. So they could get an advertisement in the house program, logo recognition in the program, recognition in your catalog, like banners, pop-up flags, and then separating it by description, half page, quarter page, and different pieces. I think when I was looking at this, usually if you've got a program, you're going to be valuing putting the sponsor on the back of your program separate from in your program. So you might want to add those different ones out. So back of the program advertisement, back of the program inside advertisement, and then specifically kind of outlining what those are. And it's a really great opportunity to be able to sit down and think, what different benefits can I provide a sponsor? So interesting side note, I will speak specifically to Calgary at this point. There was a Creative Calgary meeting last night, and Calgary Arts Development is launched a website to list all the different arts organizations, what's happening, and all the events in town called YYC What's On. And they specifically mentioned that they want to buy ads in local arts publications to be advertising this site. So I made a side note to make sure to share that with you guys today. So if you do have a program that you have an opportunity to promote that, the website is YYC What's On, and it's operated by Calgary Arts Development. And if you reach out to them, they might buy an ad in your program. So hooray, fun side note for this slide. Fantastic. So this is just another great example of how to kind of collect your benefits. Fantastic. Okay, so another one is the sample prospect list. So the sample prospect list is a spreadsheet designed to help you capture information about uncultivated or cultivated prospects, their contact information, information about your target with the prospect, like how much you're targeting to get for the value of your sponsorship, your communication tracking, and the description of the fit. If you've never compiled a prospect list before, this will really help you think about what kinds of information you should be tracking. So here's the sample prospect list. And it's really, notice that there's an uncultivated prospects at the top, and further down there's a spot for cultivated prospects. All of the uncultivated prospects are companies that you haven't talked to about your sponsorship yet. You might have emailed them, met them at an event, chatted with them, but they don't know that you're looking at them as a potential sponsor. So there's lots of internal communication at this point in time. Once you've made the first sponsorship related contact with them and you've been talking to them about it, that would move them down into the cultivated prospects section. It's really important to separate them so you can keep an eye on how many cultivated versus uncultivated prospects you have, and to make sure to keep both types topped up so that you can keep this part of the cycle going for bringing in new sponsor prospects, ideally on an annual basis. So if you look closer into the spreadsheet, it kind of basic information like company, contact, title, telephone, what target you believe you'd like them to sponsor, the date you've been in touch with them, and then just general notes. And a really great point to start putting like notes about why they would fit within the community. Fantastic. Dun, dun. All right, cultivating. So cultivating is the stage where your organization engages the information gathered in the planning and prospecting stages and puts it into action. The cultivation of businesses that have been assessed as a fit within the arts organization. So to cultivate is to begin developing relationships with prospective sponsors before asking them to sponsor your organization. So, and the theme of like crawl, walk, run. So these different documents will help to support this part. Okay. So one of the documents that's available is a sample telephone script, which is really useful. I mean, if you're calling uncultivated prospects. Another document is a sample cultivation plan. So it's a sample plan that outlines the strategy an organization could use to cultivate potential sponsors. So you're really going to likely want to customize this for each prospect. It's not a bad idea to start designing a basic prospect experience and adapting it from a uniform starting point. Your organization might not have time to reinvent the wheel every time you meet someone new. And I think what's really important with these reference points is to always remember that it could be different depending on the size of your community, because you could literally be bumping into somebody at a curling rink or at a grocery store. In small towns, everybody knows everybody, and you could be talking to them at different events or barbecues. So these kind of documents sound extremely formal and can be used for those pieces, but please know that in this process, a lot of conversations happen that way as well. So just keeping in mind that if you're in a small community or a large community, please take from this what works best for you. And that's kind of just how we generally approach ArtsVest entirely. So great, okay. So making an approach and pitching. Wait a minute. Sample cultivation plan. I might call up the sample cultivation plan just to give an example. So that is perfect. There we go. Through the magic of the internet. So this is an example of the sample cultivation plan. So what you're doing here is you're talking about what kind of cultivation activities that you're doing as an organization. So who you're connecting with and how you connect with different people and what the outcome of that is. So different pieces with your space. Yeah, so just different strategies that you're doing. And then different outlines and follow-ups that you're doing with different people. So it's an interesting piece to reference. And then the sample telephone script. So this kind of goes through a cool leads. So somebody without an introduction or name that can be leveraged, so you don't already know them, what your strategy is, generally what you want to say, like narrative points that you can mention about why they might be interested in talking to you. And then there's a separate script for different pieces. Yeah, it's just two different examples of a script. So there's some different kind of sample pieces there. Okay. Done. Magic of the internet. Okay. Fantastic. So for making an approach or pitching, making an approach is the stage where your organization capitalizes on the relationships you've just established with your potential sponsors during the cultivation phase and starts the conversation with those individuals or companies about the sponsorship opportunities. This is also the stage where you pitch your proposal. So for a sample sponsorship proposal, this would highlight the characteristics of the sponsorship opportunity an organization's offering to the potential sponsor. So there's really a lot of different ways to do that, but I'm going to walk through the one that we have a sample of. All right, so in this sample proposal, you've got specifically an event that's being sponsored, the opportunity, inviting them to sponsor it, the benefits that they can have an option to choose from activation benefits, corporate hospitality benefits, different benefits across the season, employee engagement, brand visibility, so lots of different opportunities there. And then specifically at the bottom, the sponsorship investment, so what the cost would be. And again, there's like a million different ways to do this, but this is just a sample document. So next is a sample cover letter. So that's the cover letter to accompany a sponsorship proposal. And then the next one is a sample sponsorship agreement. So this is a sample letter of agreement that can be used between an organization and a sponsor to express agreed terms upon the sponsor relationship. So what's really important with this, and sometimes it gets confusing with artsvest, is think of our sponsorship confirmation agreement as separate than that. So the sponsorship confirmation agreement is what you need to unlock the artsvest matching funds, but you should have a separate agreement as like a sponsorship agreement with your organization, which actually outlines like the entirety of everything, with everything listed and organized and kind of managed in the way that you want, as opposed to like our very rigid form. So try to make sure that keep those separate. I think that's just a general rule of thumb. I mean, if you're starting from not having those before, then by all means, then starting with our confirmation agreement is great. I mean, if you didn't have forms before and you weren't writing anything down and you were just shaking hands, like this is a great place to start. But for organizations from a branding standpoint too, just so that you can have your own resources of like, this is what our organization's templates look like for sponsorship agreements. It's good to have an internal document for that. So I'm going to just go through that one. So here's the letter of agreement. So you're mentioning contact information, exactly what's being sponsored, the sponsor's name, the sponsor's investment, a summary. This is a really important, really great thing. I wish I'd had this when I used to work at theater companies. Deadline dates, because I used to have to manage these pieces. So like, when are you going to pay by, so that you guys can actually program your cash flow for your different quarters. Different logo approval, like if you want your logo on everything, we need to know by these dates. I mean, also, you know, I completely understand if you don't have time to hit all these deadlines, but would it be nice if we all had the availability to do this in advance and then everyone followed the deadlines? I would like to believe in that world. So logo format, this is super helpful because formatting logos is so much fun. And then a summary of the benefits. So this is going through print, advertising, media, online, all the different activation benefits, corporate hospitality, and then little extras. Look how fancy, reserved parking for guests. This is a fancy theater. So, and then at the bottom, just different signatures. So it's a really great reference document to have. So that's you'll see how it is different than our confirmation agreement that you guys work with us. So, okay. And then the next one is the sponsorship agreement tool. So I'm going to pull that one up. So the sponsorship agreement tool kind of outlines, it's a summary document. So it's got detailing the different benefits people are receiving, things you need to know about marketing, notes about formatting for web banners or for social media contesting. So it's essentially kind of a summary document which can be used for the different sponsors that you have. Okay, so back to, yeah, okay, great. Fantastic. So the tool that we just went through, it's a grid outlining a selection of important components that should be included in your agreement. So maybe if you want to store those in a grid, you've got all your agreements, but maybe you've got a separate grid that you're tracking. There's a million different ways about tracking things. So here's a whole bunch of options. Okay, so this one goes through that, which I already showed you. Ta-da. Okay, so this section is about activation. So it can be described as the stage of the cycle when your organization is making good on the terms agreed upon for the sponsorship agreement. So it's a period of time between signing the agreement and the delivery of your sponsor report when you're trying to make sure that you actually do everything you promised you were going to do, which is such a huge, important part of sponsorship. So really, really important piece. And then valuation is the way in which your organization values sponsorable properties and opportunities. It's offering to potential sponsors. And really the thing about valuation is it can fit anywhere in the cycle. So it's just here at this presentation, but honestly, you can put it anywhere in the cycle. And it's a huge piece that we get a lot of questions about in ArtsVest. So we do try to cover valuation in our first peer-to-peer workshops. There's so many different ways about valuing properties and ways of doing it. So we'll go through kind of different options for that. All right, so within these resources, the low and no cost opportunities. So this is a list of low and no cost sponsorship opportunities that can be offered to potential sponsors, which is a really great thing to be able to have as an organization as a reference point, because so often you get so excited about having a new sponsor, you want to provide them with all these benefits, and then it costs you so much money, and then at the end of the day you're not actually making that much for your operating costs. So a really interesting and useful list to have is what you can do, which maybe looks really shiny, but doesn't cost you a lot. So great to be able to keep a reference point of what those are, just for even general conversations and things as well. It really helps with people, organizations that have limited resources, to be able to think creatively about the different things that you can offer that that don't cost you that much. And then another piece that we have is a sample valuation of properties and packages grid. So this is a sample grid that displays the various values of sponsorship properties and packages, and it's a helpful aid if you're trying to create or present sponsorship levels for different companies. So an example of the sample packages grid. So this one has your different contribution levels. So for 1,000 to 3,000, you get this size of an ad in the program, this many logos, this many tickets, this many rehearsals. And when I was watching our program manager from BC's webinar last night, he was talking about different strategies about trying to value these properties. And one of the ways he was suggesting is actually reverse valuation. So start by the most you want to offer, and what does the most you want to offer look like, and like if you had a really big sponsor, what would that look like, and what would you give them, and then kind of back down the other steps from there, which I thought was a really interesting way of approaching it, because you start with what's the best we can do, and then you kind of from there go down to be able to provide different levels as to what's possible. So really interesting way about kind of just approaching it in a different way. So thought I made sure of a note to share that with you guys. Okay. Stewardship. So stewardship is defined as the supervision and responsible management of the sponsorship relationship and sponsors' interests. It's the stage which offers the opportunity for organizations to deepen relationships with a sponsor after they've already agreed to the partnership. So you're continuing to grow the relationship with them. So we've got a couple different resources for this. One is the Sample Sponsorship Deliverables Grid. I love all the titles. This is a grid that highlights what was promised to each sponsor and other relevant information to the activations and commitments specific to each partner relationship. So it's just really, it's essentially a grid that says this is what we promised we'd do. And then you just need to make sure that you actually do it. A sample sponsorship report. And so this is an executive summary of all of what you did for the sponsor. So this is where you can tell a story, you can make it really personal, you can give examples, you can give photos. So what we do at ArtsVest is one of our webinars, which is further along in the cycle in March, is actually how to build a sponsorship report. So we think it's a really important document to be able to summarize what you've provided. It's also a really great kind of gateway into having a conversation with somebody if you don't know if they're going to renew, is to be able to say, oh, well, we'd like to follow up on your sponsorship of the festival. I'd like to present, can I meet with you to present with you your sponsorship report? And you go through and you review everything that you've done and then ask them when you might, they might feel comfortable talking about sponsoring the next year. So really, really great document. I did make a request today to see if we can have an archived version of that available on our recorded webinars. So that's in process, just for those of you, because I think it's important to realize that all of you are on different cycles right now. Like some of you had your festival last week, some of you are going to have your festival in December, some are going to have it in April. So you're at different parts in the process and different times. So we're just trying to be able to provide resources now that are relevant to you at that time. So it's going to be hopefully more resources will be available to you during the different parts in the cycle that you're in, which will be helpful. So this is an example of sponsorship deliverables grid. So this is outlining exactly who the sponsor is and then exactly what the different pieces are, the deadline by which that is done, who's doing it, was it completed, whose responsibility it is. These documents can be super, super helpful and important to be able to have a checkpoint for those pieces. Okay, so additional resources that we have online. One is the Art of Sponsorship. So it gets confusing because there's Sponsorship 101, which is like a 3-hour course that I taught you guys at the launch, and it goes through introduction. It's a slideshow that you go through, and it goes through an introduction of what sponsorship is. Now, the Art of Sponsorship is a 6-module video course that you can watch. So Business in the Arts used to charge for this, and now it's included for free if you're within ArtsVest. So you can just log into these modules and watch them online whenever works for you. The different modules, there's understanding the business of sponsorship, using planning as an effective tool when seeking sponsorship, knowing how to identify the likely best prospects for sponsorship and where to find them, implementing practical steps involved in trying to secure sponsorship, from creating support materials to making an approach and managing the points of contact, including the follow-up. It's a long title. The next one's managing the sponsorship relationship to help guide it towards the likelihood of a long-term partnership. And the last one is implementing some techniques involved in evaluating sponsorship. So if you're like, oh, wow, number 3 sounds fantastic. We were talking about that at a board meeting last month. You can go in, find the link and share it to your board, and you guys can all watch it together or apart, however that works for you. So really interesting content there if you've got an opportunity. And so the other new resource that's really great is developed by our traction. So there's marketing tutorials, which we've never had access to before. And it's for those that are new to marketing for their organization. It's about 45 minutes each module. And the idea is when you've watched the modules, upon completion, you'll be able to develop a stronger brand, better connect with your audience, access marketing research tools, connect your marketing plan with your sponsorship plan, identify and define unique value propositions, and different social media tips and strategies. So really great. We haven't had marketing resources before, so I hope that these are helpful. And if they are, by all means, please pop me a note and let me know, just because that's really great feedback for us to have in the province. Ta-da! Okay, so this is a list of the archival webinars. What's crazy is that, so we used to use Adobe Connect, and for us to transition from Adobe Connect to Zoom, we had to back up all the content we'd shared on Adobe Connect, which was over 120 different webinars. So these are the best of those webinars. 120 webinars, that's a lot of content. So we've gone through, and these are French and English versions of some of the top webinars that we have. So these are all available on Mentor City right now, and you can access them. So keeping sponsors happy, how to help a board secure sponsorship, approaching small and large businesses. So there's lots of different options there. Some of these webinars will be offered in our cycle, and you'll be able to watch those live to get the 1 hour towards your training hours. When you watch these, it doesn't count towards your training hours, but still great to watch them. Another great point that was made by our BC program manager was that another great way to kind of connect with a mentor, like if you're looking at different mentors, maybe you want to work with Jeremy Morgan, you could watch their webinar, see if that's kind of a style and a fit of a mentor you want to work with, and then follow up with them and say you were watching their webinar and this is why you think it'd be relevant for them to be your mentor. So really interesting kind of entry point as well. So I thought that was a really good suggestion. You guys, look at this. 12:44. Okay, 45 minutes. That's perfect. Great timing. Hooray. So this is the time where you get to ask me all sorts of questions. And you can type the questions in the Q&A pod, which should be fantastic. In the meantime, while questions are being posted, I wanted to share with you guys, I will be sending out a monthly email, which kind of gives an update on Mentor City and different tools and tips for ArtsVest. But I'll be sending it out later this week because I didn't want people to get confused between the webinar link before this webinar or not. Also, if you're wondering about WASP free webinar, that's very funny. So yesterday I did a video conference and I was so excited that it was +1 outside. I opened my door and a wasp came in and essentially trolled me throughout my video conference. So WASP free webinar, I'm absolutely thrilled today. That's great. Anyways, I wanted to share with you the next webinar is next Wednesday. It's with me and the mentor Jerry Smith. And it's at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So make a special note about that time because in Alberta, we don't normally do things in the morning. So we're trying to be able to switch our different times so that it helps to support BC and Ontario as well with the different time zones. So I will be sending out links and notes to that. The other webinars that are happening this month, there's going to be one on the 22nd and I believe the 23rd. So I'll be putting all that information in the email to you guys. Great, I've got some questions here. So specifically looking for where the art of sponsorship modules are on Mentor City. So I will show you. It should be, it's under Archive, Webinars, and Tutorials, Art of Sponsorship. So there's the modules here. Let's click this, what happens? Perfect, yeah, this would take you to the different modules. So starting with the introduction, and then these are the different links. And to view the module on your browser, it says that you need to have Flash on your browser. So if it's not auto-population, like it isn't on mine, you would need to download that. Perfect. All right. Great question. So Diane's wondering, will there be alternative times for upcoming webinars if you can't make the current schedule? So yeah, so we're trying to do things differently. So last year with ArtsVest, I hosted all the webinars for Alberta and all our managers in different provinces hosted their own. And what we're trying to do now is to make it national so that people can nationally can meet different managers and to have different conversations. And also it helps us to be able to offer more webinars in different time zones and also in with different content. So what we're trying to do is provide more options. And so what I think at this point, like for the one that's happening, what to expect when we pursue sponsorships next week, that'll be the one that's essentially for BC, for the English speaking one for BC, Toronto, and Alberta. However, Saskatchewan got funding after us, and so they're joining the program right now. They're just in the process of applications. And so they're actually going to have separate webinars that'll be running after ours. So if you miss that one, but you want to watch one of those live, we'll be able to provide you access to the Saskatchewan ones later. Also, if you're interested in French webinars, our amazing program manager, Mireille from Montreal, does all of the webinars in French in Montreal. So if you've got some staff that might be interested in those resources, they're fantastically available now, which is really exciting. Yeah, and I think one of the things we're trying to do as well is to be able to have different times for different webinars. So we are trying to be able to provide alternatives this round. So we're just trying to learn how to do it. The main catch, which I think we're fine with, we're at 98 right now, is to make sure we Zoom only lets us have 500 people at once. But I think we should be okay across the country. We do have the most participants in Alberta, though, so I will tout that because I'm quite proud of it. All right, more questions. Da, da, da. Oh, great question. Daryl's wondering, are there plans for ArtsVest to provide sponsorship tracking software? That's really interesting. At this point in time, we don't have any training modules that speak specifically to promoting a certain kind of software, though I have a contact that I referred as a mentor recently that I'm hoping that might become a mentor so that you'd have the opportunity to have those conversations with somebody that's worked in that space for years. So my hopes, I don't think we'll be producing software, but my hopes is that we might have a consultant as a mentor that could have those kind of tech conversations with you, because it's true that that element is missing at this point. With regards to our own software, Mentor City is actually, that whole platform was created for ArtsVest, the one that you log into. So if you can imagine, before that existed, which is before I had this job, there was a person that organized all those things and actually organized all the schedules of the different mentors, connecting them with the different people and rescheduling all the different meetings and sending all the different tools and templates. Yeah, that was like one person did that, which is incredible and mind-blowing. So now we have a platform, a software platform. So sometimes it's a little bit difficult to use, but my goodness, gosh, it's so great to be able to have that option. All right, I've got some more questions here. Great question. So Aaron's saying, on Mentor City, I don't see some of the resources you're looking at. Under archived webinars and tutorials, I only see introduction to marketing and webinar recordings. So let me see, because I am in my own account. I'm not in the ArtsVest account. So under archive webinars and tutorials, so introduction to marketing, there should be, if you scroll down, there should be 3 different resources in that field. The archive tutorials, artist sponsorship, and webinar recordings. If that doesn't exist, please send me an email, and that's a tech issue that we'll look into for you guys. All right. Any more questions? And thank you so much to everybody who's been able to get together as a group and watch as a group. It's just so fantastic to have that happen. And thank you so much to Maggie and Next Fest and Theater Network in Edmonton sent me a selfie proving that they were together in the office. So that was absolutely just made my day. Oh, fantastic. Okay, great. And so I do have somebody else. The missing art of sponsorship. So there's a couple people that aren't able to view art of sponsorship. So I will look into that piece, and we'll make sure that you can view everything. I don't know why I can see anything you can't, so we'll figure it out. All right, fantastic. Well, if you don't have any more questions, thank you so much. Look at that, under an hour, everybody. Fantastic. Hopefully you can all enjoy the rest of your week. It doesn't involve snow. It's gonna be 17 degrees here soon. Not right now, but like soon, which is really exciting. So if you have any more questions about anything, if the documents aren't showing or there's different pieces, just pop me a note anytime. Super happy to help. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.